Привit moi druzy. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes, and here's what I want to talk about today. Artur Rehi stole my line. Now, I'm only saying that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but what I'm saying is he said today the kind of thing that I've been saying and saying and saying and saying. We all come to this when we're looking at how to analyze Ukraine through different lenses. He's got real military background and he can analyze things on the ground very well. I don't have that ability. I expand the aperture and I look at the lens of leadership, the political leadership, what's going on there. That's my background, my framework. I have a master's in public policy. I have a PhD in organizational leadership. I look through what's going on with the leadership. So I've been saying for a long time now, Prigozhin and Shoigu and others within the infrastructure of the upper echelon of the Russian apparatus. They're infighting, and that infighting is going to cost them significantly. Well, Artur talked about the same thing today. Here we go. Here's what he had to say.
He looked content. The beef, or should I say infighting, between Prigozhin and the Russian Minister of Defense, which means Gerasimov and Shoigu, continues. This is no small fight. This has the potential to grow into something huge.
And it really does have the potential to grow into something huge. And I think this is absolutely fascinating.
And if power will change hands in the future in Russia, this fight will come to the forefront.
And I think that Prigozhin is a key player going forward in the future. And I think Putin's aware of this, and this is part of what's sidelining him. I don't know that for a fact, but everything that I'm seeing tells me that there's this part of the infighting is because of some power struggles that may be focused on the future, not just the present.
Prigozhin is complaining again. Let's hear what he has to say.
Давайте еще раз распедалю все подробно, для того, чтобы исключить дополнительные вопросы.
Okay, so Prigozhin has complained about the Russian military not doing their part before. Here, he's complaining about how the Ukrainian military is blocking him.
Для того, чтобы разблокировать Бахмут, желательно заблокировать ЧВК «Вагнер». Для этого ВСУ создала ряд группировок. Одну группировку в Славянске, 67-я бригада, вторую группировки в Северске, 81-я и 66-я бригада.
He's talking about the Ukrainian groupings, Ukrainian strike forces, task forces that have been formed to counterattack. As I told before, the Ukrainian military command decided to counterattack and hold Bakhmut. He's talking about these forces that will counterattack the Wagner or Russian forces held sides of the city. That is a huge problem for Wagner or for any surrounding force, because if you surround the city, right, you gotta surround it, meaning you gotta contain the forces inside the city and you gotta contain the forces that want to liberate the city. You gotta have these two fronts. So surrounding a city takes a lot of manpower and weaponry and ammunition, which there are.
And this is Artur's strength. As a military man, he's seeing things that I might not see, talking about the tactics on the ground and what's going on and all of that. He's done an excellent job so far, but he's going to go on. Watch this.
Russian and the Wagner forces do not have. These counterattacks are a serious issue for them and for their attempts to surround Bakhmut. As long as these counterattacks are going on, they cannot surround Bakhmut, because they have to fence off these counterattacks.
Поэтому я стучу во все двери, бью тревогу с боеприпасами и с подкреплением, а также с тем, чтобы нам прикрыли фланги. В случае, если все слаженно, без амбиций, выебонов и истерик сделают эту совместную работу, то тогда мы блокируем ВСУ.
Basically, he said right now the golden words, which every Western military analyst has already said. Russian forces do not work with each other. They infight. Air Force doesn't cooperate with the ground forces. Wagner said right now, Prigozhin said, if every Russian army branch would work together.
Now, let me stop there for a moment. He's right. You see this in the ISW. You see this in General Petraeus. You see this in Ben Hodges. You see all of them talking about the same kind of thing, like they're just not cooperating. But he's going on to make a bigger point.
This would work. Well, duh, Mr. Prigozhin. There's corruption in the Russian army. That's why they cannot work together. There's no radios. There's not enough training for the pilots. The descent units were decimated in the first 3 days of the war. Mostly it comes down to corruption. So There's an easy solution for this problem, Mr. Prigozhin. Change the entire Russian mindset to not be corrupt. And
now that's the trick. How to change their entire Russian mindset. He's talking about what's actually happened as a consequence, but what really needs to take place is some kind of change at the top. But how do you change a culture? Everybody who understands organizational culture, for example, when I teach chapters of my textbooks on organizational culture, if you start like, let's change the culture, it doesn't change. Sometimes you have to change the entire personnel apparatus within the organization in order to get a cultural change. Same kind of thing with a nation. Changing the culture of Russian society to not believe that authoritarian should just be able to tell everybody what to do, or to change the corruption which is endemic within the society. And Prigozhin is, when you say corruption, he's like the poster child of corruption. And so he understands, as a corrupt leading figure within Russian society, that it's corruption that's the problem, but he can't actually get out of it. It's almost like a Chinese finger trap. You know, that thing where you put the fingers in and the harder you pull, the more it traps. Yeah, he understands it. They're all corrupt. Well, so are you. But what's the solution? What's the way out? There is no real way out. Now they have to live with the consequences of the corruption. I'm going to let Artur talk a little bit more.
It's so weird how Prigozhin, being himself one of the biggest corrupt officials, agents in Russia, the mother or father of corruption, this is Prigozhin, talks about how without corruption, this would work. Well, my friend, it begins with you. Look in the mirror. Yeah, well, Prigozhin was telling that he sent his representative at the Russian Ministry of Defense headquarters to ask for more ammunition and talk about the situation on the front, talk about how they could unite forces and not infight. The representative's pass to the Russian Ministry of Defense building was declined. His pass was cancelled. He was not let in.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, Wagner is the biggest private army in Russia, and their representative was not let in to even talk to the Russian Ministry of Defense headquarters. That is the level of infighting. That is the beef. They're screwed. And I'm getting popcorn.
And that's why I spend my time talking about the leadership issues, because that's so significant. Now, I don't know how to quantify it, but I do know that the infighting between Prigozhin and Shoigu and whoever else, Gerasimov, whatever's going on there is worth at least battalions, if not divisions, of soldiers. Because if they could coordinate and actually play nice together, it could be very, very bad for the Ukrainians, and a lot more lives would be lost. But now, I'm telling you that the analysis that focuses on how these players are working together, Shoigu and Gerasimov and Prigozhin and others, it's very important. It's as important as the diplomatic efforts in getting tanks and other materials onto the battlefield. Because if they can't work together, they're going to be ripped apart by the Ukrainian army. And it looks like they are being. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to what I had to say. Thank you, Artur, for doing a great job with your analysis as well. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine. Talk to you tomorrow.